Hi everyone. So why are we here? So there's been some major developments. Some of them were just mentioned. So how many people here know about the Sun TV, aka Fox News North? Just hands up. Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the major reasons we're here. For those who don't know the details, they tried to get basically forced onto all of our TV screens, which basically would be a subsidy of $60 million, and they subsequently lost that battle. But we can look forward to seeing the channel still probably in the next spring, and it's a really big victory for the media reform movement that they weren't able to get that forced carriage on TV and to get what I consider a regulatory bailout. But we do need to be prepared for having a Fox News of Canada in the spring. I think we have a really great panel to discuss what we should be doing about that. And at the same time, we have Shaw just acquired CanWest Global TV assets. Bell is on the path to purchasing CTV. So we have major media consolidation happening in this country, vertical integration. And this may seem like it's all about TV. And kind of traditional content, but it's also about a few companies who control traditional media, their plans to impose a more command and control version on digital communications. Because these are, Bell and Shaw, these are telecom companies, and they're buying these assets, these content assets for a reason. And we don't exactly know what that means, but they're certainly expecting to have some means of controlling the digital environment. So that's something that we need to, I think, be really vigilant about. And I think it's a really important time to be discussing this because once those go through, then we really have to be ready for what comes out of it. And there is, in fact, in next May, there's a big public hearing on media concentration, vertical integration. So another thing for all of us who care about these things to be prepared for. And again, it's about television as a medium, but it's also about, and that's under threat, and that's really consolidated, but it's also about the open collaboration, participation, expression, and empowerment that we see on the open internet. That's also now under threat through these mergers. So what are some of the questions that will be addressed in this panel? What are the implications of this rightward tilt and vertical integration? What does this mean for Canadian culture and indeed our democracy? How can independent and public media respond to this new media ecology and regulatory environment? We're in a unique moment when it comes to media. There's exciting projects being launched every day, and public and independent media, I think, are really well positioned to take a leadership role in this new era. Yet it appears that big media, traditional media are trying to kind of take back control. So I'm sure these panelists will tell us how to solve this problem. I'm looking forward to that. No pressure. So who do we have with us today? We have Donald Gutstein, who's an adjunct professor in the School of Communications at Simon Fraser. He's the co-director of Newswatch Canada, a media monitoring project. He has taught in the areas of news media, propaganda analysis, and documentary research. His most recent book, which I highly recommend, is Not a Conspiracy Theory, How Business Propaganda Hijacks Democracy, just out last year. Really great book if you want to learn about kind of the right-wing media infrastructure and cultural infrastructure. And Donald's going to talk about the construction of the right-wing media infrastructure in Canada. We also have David Skinner. He's the chair of the Department of Communications at York University. He's published a number of articles and book chapters dealing with alternative media reform in Canada. He's a member of the board of directors of openmedia.ca. He's going to discuss relevant media policy matters, the media democracy movement, and the opportunity for independent media right now. And some of you know, David actually helped found Media Democracy Day here, so it's really great to have him back, and he's definitely a good person to have talking on these issues. Tony Burman's sort of already been introduced, but I'll just mention, just a refresher, he was the CBC's editor-in-chief from 2000 to 2007. In 2008, Tony was appointed as the managing director of Al Jazeera English, and I believe Tony will address where Al Jazeera and public media in general fit into this whole equation and this changing media environment. So thanks so much, and let's get started.
Well, thanks, Joan and Steve, the Andersons, for introducing the panel. Tony, in his excellent address, said that the media system is broken. Well, I agree that the media system is broken for us, but it's working just fine for them. But it's working the way they want it. And my unpleasant job today is to sketch out how it's working for them. The right-wing media infrastructure, what it is, how it works, and why they're doing what they're doing. The panel got its name from the Fox News North, the meeting that Stephen Harper had with Rupert Murdoch in New York in March of 2009. And from that meeting, when it was made public, came the Fox News North story. And somehow, that meeting had something to do with it, but I don't think it did. Like, why would Rupert Murdoch, one of the most important global media barons, be meeting to discuss what some minor tycoon from Quebec could set up a Fox News North knockoff? Like, didn't make sense. There's something more going on there. Because Rupert Murdoch only meets with national leaders in countries where he already has media properties. Like he'll meet with Barack Obama or in the US, or with David Cameron in the UK. And sometimes he meets with leaders, like in the early 90s, when he wanted to get his Star satellite TV system approved by the Chinese government. So he courted them for a few years before they gave him approval for this. So Murdoch does not have any media properties in Canada yet. So I think there's a bigger story going on than just this Fox News North one. When it becomes public in the fullness of time, because Murdoch waits till the time is right, it's not going to be pretty, I believe. Okay? A second comment that I want to make in terms of relating to the right-wing media infrastructure, we need to look not only at the media properties and their owners, but we also have to look at the sources of news that are given preference, privileged in the system. And that's why I need to bring up the broader context of the global neoliberal movement. In my view, they are an integral part of the infrastructure. And what this is about is to capture political power and to transform society into an inegalitarian market state. Some places like Chile, where they could just seize power directly, but in democratic countries, they have to do this by changing the climate of ideas. And these are the media, but they're also teachers, ministers, novelists, a whole range of people who do not create the ideas themselves, but they distribute them to their audiences. And so what we need to look at is a very long-term project by the neoliberal movement worldwide to influence through the media to change the climate of ideas. That's important to keep in mind. Without getting into too much detail, one example would be like setting up a think tank like the Fraser Institute, whose role is to package neoliberal doctrine in what they call research, and then deliver it to their audiences. And an example of that would be the doctrine in terms of education is government schools are awful. Like, they don't use the term public schools, they're government schools are awful, and they need to be eliminated and replaced by privately owned schools. So that is the doctrine that was enunciated by Milton Friedman. And then, so the Fraser Institute's role is to take the doctrine, create these school report cards, which look like research, and then disseminate them to the media. Okay, and by doing it year after year after year, finally those ideas become accepted. It's good to rank schools. What's wrong with a little competition in schools? So we have on one side all the sources that are pushing the agenda. At the same time, the owners of media have been moving to meet them. We know that commercial media, capitalist media, have always been supportive of capitalism and hostile to government, unions, and social movements. But starting in the mid-90s, this all was accelerated when Conrad Black took over control of the Southern papers. What he did was, first of all, to fire and replace liberal editors, to cut newsroom staffs, which made it more difficult for them to go out and get a variety of viewpoints on a story. If you have fewer people, you have to do more stories. You only go to the official and government sources. And besides, like, if I know the guy in the next desk has been fired, I got to keep my head down and do what the boss wants. He brought in conservative columnists that are still populating all of the Canada's papers. He raided the Fraser Institute for staff. He created the National Post, a staunchly dedicated conservative paper, and all of that together helped create the Canadian Alliance, the Conservative Party under Stephen Harper, and so on. That pattern has existed over two owners since Black sold the papers to the Aspers in 2001. Now we have Paul Godfrey running the papers, and he's the head of a company called Post Media Network, okay, which is a company that now owns all of the major papers in Canada. But Godfrey doesn't own the papers. They are now owned, as far as I can tell, by a group of American hedge funds, led by a company called Golden Tree Asset Management. So for some, the Competition Bureau, they all let it through. And so Golden Tree Asset Management and our daily newspapers that we rely on for the information we need in a democracy. The owners see this as an asset to be managed. And what do hedge funds do? They're run by very wealthy individuals who are prepared to take higher risks in return for higher returns. So they're not in it for the long term, they're in it for the short term to get as much profit as they can and then flip it somewhere else. So the first component in the right-wing media infrastructure is most newspapers in Canada. The Post Media papers, all of the Sun papers, the Sun TV that was mentioned before. Pierre Carl Pelledo, who owns the Sun newspaper chain and was a promoter of this Fox News North, all of those papers, which doesn't include the Vancouver Sun, but the Toronto Sun and a whole bunch of those, they're also, if you ever look at them, very conservative in their approach as well. They have columnists like Ezra Levant, Peter Worthington, Michael Coren, and their ilk. Last night, David Beers, when he talked about the Globe and Mail and how Conrad Black and Izzy Asper were communicating about combining the Globe and Mail and the National Post into one national daily, he said it didn't happen, but it actually did. And how it happened is because if you look at the editorial board of the Globe and Mail, 2/3 of them are people from the National Post. And the comment editor at the Globe and Mail is from the National Post, so it's happened. And so what I got to say is, like, the main part of this right-wing media infrastructure are the daily newspapers in Canada. That's the most important thing. I'll talk briefly about some of the other components. Talk radio is owned by the right. Yes, and the main actor there is the Chorus Radio Network. Now here in Vancouver, we have Bill Good and Christy Clark, who we would call centrists. But if you look at the overall network, I mean, they are overwhelmed by the Charles Adlers, Roy Greens, and there's half a dozen others. So that's a big part of the infrastructure as well. Chorus is most prominent, but there are several smaller networks, like one I found, the Golden West Radio Network, which broadcasts to rural Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, beaming a mix of Christian and right-wing programming that we would never come across. One of the neoliberal think tanks, the Frontier Center for Public Policy in Winnipeg, has a deal with Golden West to distribute its libertarian commentaries across the network. Third component, the internet. On the internet, the blogging Tories prevail. There's over 100 bloggers who relentlessly promote Harper, libertarianism, and conservatism, and attack government and progressive values. Now, certainly there's a lot of stuff on the internet. I'm not saying they own the internet, but they've got a momentum. And their members will write an op-ed piece in the National Post. Somebody else will pick, one of the bloggers picks it up. Hey, did you see what was in the Post today? And it goes around and around the blogosphere, splashes back into the media. And these ideas sort of rise into public consciousness. We have no idea where they came from. Okay, so all of that's happening. A fourth component is Maclean's magazine, which entered the right-wing infrastructure in 2005 when I forgot to mention all the billionaires that run these organizations. Billionaire Ted Rogers brought Ken White from the National Post to run Maclean's, and White brought a bunch of his National Post cronies in with him. And I won't say that the Maclean's is as bad as something like the National Review in the US, but it's tending in that kind of a direction. And while I'm talking about Maclean's, I want to just mention Andrew Coyne, who I would say is the godfather of the right-wing media infrastructure. He's, of course, the national editor for Maclean's. He's seen quite frequently on CBC, and we're not going to get into the CBC, although there's the right-wing infrastructure influences everything that's not part of it and drags them all in a certain direction. But Ken White is also an advisor to the, Andrew Coyne is also an advisor to the Preston Manning's Center for Democracy, which trains right-wingers to take over government. And he's also a trustee of Peter Monk's Aurea Foundation, which gets its money from Barrick Gold and pumps millions of dollars every year into right-wing think tanks like the Fraser Institute and the Canadian Constitution Foundation. So you can see how all of this fits together as a little pattern. The only hole in the infrastructure is television, and the Fox News North was intended to fill that hole. It's going to happen. It won't be as grandiose as was originally hoped by them. But I want to say that what the billionaire Shaw family do now that they own CanWest, the television stations, will have far more impact, I believe, on most Canadians than a small news channel would have. So I want to finally end with the most important component in the infrastructure, the Harper Government. Okay? And I have 3 quotes that I want to bring to your attention. In 1998, when Harper was head of the National Citizens Coalition and Jean Chrétien was the Prime Minister, Harper and his fellow neoliberal, Tom Flanagan, wrote this: "The purpose of the conservative movement is to change public opinion and public policy, not solely to elect a party to office with a particular name. Much has already been achieved and can be advanced further by working on public policy and pressuring the governing Liberal Party." So that was in 1998. 11 years later, Harper was now the Prime Minister, and Flanagan revised the mission of the conservative movement. What he wrote was, "Winning elections and controlling the government as often as possible is the most effective way of shifting public philosophy. If you control the government, you choose judges, you appoint the senior civil service, you fund or defund advocacy groups, and you do many other things that gradually influence the climate of opinion." And I gotta say that if you follow carefully what Harper's been doing, you can see step after step after step. And as to how this all works, I'm going to end with this a quote from Harper's International Trade Minister, Peter Van Loan. About 2 months ago, the Fraser Institute issued its annual Economic Freedom of the World Index. And this is an excellent propaganda device because you do it every year, so year after year, it becomes part of our landscape of ideas. And because you give rankings, 10.0 or 9.3, people are generally cowed by statistics. So they say, well, it must mean something. So of course, Hong Kong and Singapore are the two leading most economically free countries, but they're not countries that spring to top of mind when you think of democratic values. So they released the annual rankings. Peter Van Loan was the keynote speaker there. And he ended his remarks by saying this to the Fraser Institute crowd. He said, "So let's work together to continue convincing Canadians of the importance of economic freedom." And I found that quite astonishing that, you know, I found this quote on the government website, so it wasn't secret or anything like that. So Harper and the Fraser Institute and the Rightwing Media Infrastructure are all aligned as we speak to further undermine democratic values. And I just want to end by saying it's not a pretty picture, but we need to know the enemy before we can make progress. Thank you.